welcome to It's Not Canon. I'm Wesley.
I'm Blake.
And we don't know what we're doing here. We just decided that we're going to create a Star Trek YouTube show, right? So,
because why not? There's not enough of those out there.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the issue. So we work at a digital agency in Charleston together. We're both huge Trekkies, and I think we were both a little frustrated by the fandom, which is why we called it It's Not Canon.
I'm completely frustrated with fandom, to be honest. It's just, it's kind of, it makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the deal. We both grew up loving Star Trek, and we're like in the golden age of Trek, man. We've gone years with no content. Now we have 2 live shows that are both badass. Got 2 more live action shows coming, a cartoon coming, maybe another movie coming, and all these fans want to do is get out there and bitch and whine when they should be stoked.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it goes to a larger question of the role of internet fandom in all of these properties. It's kind of a problem across the board, especially, you know, for me, I'm a big Star Trek fan, but I'm also a big Star Wars fan, you know, Battlestar Galactica, all these things. And it's just, there's all these common threads of people just wanting, like, the bitching is the point.
Yeah, it's like all they want to do is pick things apart. Like, you got these people out there doing amazingly creative things and making these awesome movies and awesome shows. And these people that aren't creating anything, all they want to do is sit back there and pick it apart and talk about how bad it doesn't suck and that's not canon or the Orville is better. Like, why can't you just enjoy some awesome content? Like, sit on your couch, sit in a movie theater and have an escape from the real world for an hour, 2 hours, and just smile and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the real reason we're doing this is because we're super pumped about Star Trek Picard.
Yeah, so yesterday I came in and I was like, did you watch it? We both woke up at like 3 a.m. and watched it twice before we came into work. I watched it a 3rd time last night. I think you did too.
I did too.
So finally this morning we're like, hey, instead of just like talking about this in the corner of the office, let's like just do it in front of a camera.
Yeah, I was like, we should be doing this on camera. So here we are.
So I think we should start this by just doing our review and recap of the first episode of Picard.
Agreed.
Right, so just want to like run down how the episode went. Is that how we're going to do this show?
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll kind of just figure this shit out as we go.
Have you ever been a stranger to yourself?
Many, many times.
First off, I couldn't have been happier. Let's just a big picture. Like, I could not have been happier with this episode. Like, it was nothing that I expected to be. Like, the only thing that I could even call, I think you texted me and said it was lovely. I had just told my wife and she woke up, she asked me how it was. I was like, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. I mean, it was nothing like we've ever seen before. I mean, you know, all the other shows, it was either on a starship or on a space station, right? This was the first time we're seeing like Earth and we're seeing something outside of here's the ship and here's the crew, and we're seeing life in this in the future from a different view. And starting it, you know, at Chateau Picard, the shots, the scenery, thematically, I mean, it just kind of blew my mind. It was absolutely gorgeous the way they're expanding this universe.
Agreed. Starting with the Enterprise D, the opening shot.
Dude.
It was a bit of a freak out moment for me, I'm not going to lie.
Well, and the way it like, with blue skies coming in, you know, because that was the way Nemesis kind of started with the wedding, right, and then ended with B4. Right. And what I really loved about the first scene, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but like it ended both where Nemesis ended, but also where All Good Things ended, right? Because it ended with Picard playing poker for the first time and him saying, "I should have done this a long time ago."
Well, I think that's a good place to start. Really, is that they're expanding the universe, like you said, but this show has roots going back throughout the Next Generation. The whole run, it's connecting to so many different things, and it's kind of mind-blowing, and I'm still kind of processing it. Even though I've watched it 3 times, I'm just going back, okay, this connects to that episode. Obviously, the poker thing connects to multiple episodes. Bruce Maddox connects to The Measure of a Man.
I mean, and not just that, but also, and as we go through the episode, we'll talk about it a little more, but I was even thinking, like, the Daystrom Institute has been talked about in every single series, even going back to the original series. So they're pulling stuff, and obviously, you know, the relationship with the Romulans, which is going to get even more important. I mean, it's not just that they're taking TNG; they're taking it back like all the way. Yeah. Oh, it was gorgeous. So in that first scene, obviously, what I also thought was weird is that he's dreaming, so he sees Data in his old uniform, like the way he last saw him, but it was on Enterprise D instead of Enterprise E and 10 forward.
Right.
So I just thought the way like his brain was working in the dream was like, oh, this is how I remember Data from here, but this is where we got to know each other and become family was actually on D and not E.
Well, as much as we love the TNG movies, I mean, if we think about Picard and Data on the Enterprise, it's the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting that they're starting with what's clearly going to be about Picard. It's his show. We're in his head, at least in the pilot episode. It's very much in his head. You're with him the whole way. Well, obviously, it's a little different when we're talking about Daj, but even that connects almost immediately back to Picard. So, here's what I liked about the pilot. They're clearly setting out to set at a different tone, a different pace, a different style than Discovery. Now, I love Discovery.
Oh, yeah.
And we can talk about how people shit on that show all the time. But I
don't get it.
I think it's a wonderful show, but I think it's great that they're clearly taking a more stately pace with this, which I think is appropriate for the character and for like the weight that is behind this show. It actually, in my mind, ties a little bit with the way that they're doing The Mandalorian on the Star Wars side.
I thought the pacing was very similar to Mandalorian, how like you don't throw all your characters in to the pilot, you kind of like slow roll out your characters, so it's like a build up.
Yeah.
Which I really thought was cool.
Like the J.J. Abrams movies, both on Star Wars and Star Trek, they're fast paced, they're like quick boom, 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 high emotion, high drama, all that stuff. And one complaint that I hear a lot and I read a lot, and maybe I felt from time to time, is that it just moves too fast.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that what The Mandalorian's doing with pacing on Star Wars, they're also doing here. Just slowing it down, letting you feel the scene, having scenes where just things play out.
Much more you get the emotion. You can't get the emotion of and feel that empathy for Picard unless they slow it down like that.
Right.
So then, he then wakes up and he's at Chateau Picard, which the one thing that I guess I forgot, and because remember we've had so many years of content. When I first watched it, I immediately asked, well, where's his family? And for some reason, it wasn't until the second time I watched it that I remembered they all died in a fire. And I forgot about that emotional scene from Generations.
Right.
Because, we met that family in Family, the episode after Best of Both Worlds.
Right.
And then you find out in Generations, and Picard was just tore up.
Yeah.
And that I guess wasn't it a scene with Deanna Troi? I think he was, crying about I forgot the little boy's name.
Renee.
Renee. Yeah, I was about to say it started with an R. Renee. Yeah. So he's there basically alone, but he's got these two caretakers that are Romulan, which I actually read the 2 of the 3. So I guess which really sucks. The Countdown comics. The third one didn't make it out before the episode. But you meet those 2 Romulans in the second comic of the Countdown. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually haven't read those, but I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, the first 2 are good. I mean, it sucks that they couldn't get their shit together to get the third one out beforehand. Yeah. Which, can I tell you, speaking of comics, Countdown comics, I only have one single complaint about Picard. And it's not just about Picard, it's about the universe itself. And I don't want to be, again, this is called It's Not Canon, but I'm going to be hypocritical here. The Countdown comics to the J.J. Abrams video I thought were really good. When it had Geordi, and Geordi created the ship that Spock tried to save Romulus. But in those comics, which I thought were canon, Data actually is alive and is captain of the Enterprise.
Right.
So I'm taking these comics with a grain of salt because I'm like, last time I trusted the comics.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, such a large part of this show is about Data being dead, so I guess they're wiping out.
A little bit of retconning going on, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm not gonna complain about it too much, but
there's all kinds of dubious canon with Star Trek, and there's Star Trek Online, the game. I don't really know what role that plays. I've never played it. I wish I had time for video games, and I just don't.
And I guess the next scene, I'm just trying to remember it all. The next scene is Daj with her boyfriend.
Right. And
what I really thought was cool about this scene is, I don't know if you caught this, but Daj's boyfriend is that same species as Poe from Discovery. I don't even know what that species is called.
But it's like the eyes.
With the eyes. But that, she comments about how pretty they are. Yeah. But that's I guess that's only the second time we've met that species. We never met that species before Poe.
It's a cool tie-in, though.
Yeah,
interesting looking species. Very cool alien. Very cool makeup.
So they're obviously, they get attacked. He gets killed. She is activated. So we obviously immediately know something's going on. She's an android of some sort. And then it cuts to my absolute favorite scene of the whole thing, which is the interview. Any thoughts on that one?
I thought that was highly emotional, very well done, and it was a really interesting way to info dump.
Yeah.
Without it feeling like an info dump. It was, you know, it's pretty clever. I mean, it's been done in movies before, but you know, I think that's where the Aaron Sorkin kind of comparison comes from. That's kind of one of his gimmicks.
But it's a good way of doing it, instead of just like flashbacks. Right.
I thought it was really, really well done.
I really liked just some Easter egg there with like one of the camera crew was like a trill.
Yeah.
I thought that was super cool.
There was a trill. There was what's that species? Tellarite.
Oh yeah.
With the the tusks.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't catch that one.
Yeah. Good mix.
Damn,
it's
I
like
need
a
to go back.
Tellarite key grip.
There's so much you just don't catch. I guess I got to go back and watch it a fourth or fifth time.
Tellarite's running camera.
I loved the Dunkirk line, right? Because I am a history buff, and for those of you who didn't understand the symbolism there, because he actually makes fun of the interviewer of like, you don't know your history. Basically, just when you're attacking me and you don't know shit. But you know, the Allied forces were backed up. Basically to the water where they couldn't escape as the Germans were coming in. So basically, they had to be saved, I guess, by the Brits, if I'm not mistaken. But by the Allied
British yachts.
Yeah. So you know, the symbolism there is the Romulans were the Allied forces, and I guess the supernova was the Germans.
Right.
But unlike Dunkirk, you know, the Romulans didn't get saved because the Federation, you know, backed out.
Right.
So this is what would have happened at Dunkirk had, you know, those guys not show, I guess the Brits showed up for the Allied forces.
Right.
And then, you know, I guess after that, Dodge shows up.
Yeah.
Which I thought was beautiful, and I like the scene with number one, and number one would tell me like if you were a bad dude,
right?
If you were about to hurt me. Mm-hmm. What happened after that?
Let's see. Dodge shows up. Then she leaves again, and Picard goes to the Starfleet archives.
Oh, the archive scene.
Yeah.
I mean, the way they unveiled her with the painting was amazing, and all the Easter eggs in the archive. Like you saw the Stargazer there, you saw Enterprise E there. Obviously, the Captain Picard Day banner was amazing. You saw his there was his Shakespeare book there, which, you know, he actually quoted Shakespeare earlier in the episode when he was talking to number one. I love that. After the interview scene, that was my favorite scene.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's very subtle. Also interesting that the archive is staffed by holograms. Apparently,
that was cool.
Kind of goes to how the show is dealing with AI, and I guess androids are not legal, but holograms
are.
So I look forward to them exploring a bit more about that, and maybe Robert Picardo will show up at some point.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So so Dodge shows back up again, and you know they obviously get chased, and this is where the one thing going back and watching old TNG that I just can't. I love it, so I'm never going to complain, but like. The fight scenes are just so bad, right? Like, you know, when you see war, I watched Best of Both Worlds again for the 200th, 300th time to prepare for this. And like, you know, seeing Worf fight aboard and he just falls down.
Just gets wrecked immediately.
But to see these like really amazing fight scenes, which we also saw in Discovery, especially with like Georgiou, you know, she's practically a ninja. But to see the martial arts now in Star Trek is awesome. And I loved how Dodge like leaped those stairs, you know, it's running and then leaped all those stairs at one time.
Yeah.
So, you know, Dodge dies, and that was mind-blowing to me. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, that was not telegraphed at all, and wow, shocking.
I mean, you know, it's almost like he knows he finally gets Data back in a way. Right. And then immediately taken away from Picard again. I mean, it just shows and one thing we skipped over was the theme. Because the next words out of my mouth was going to be like, now you understand why Picard's so broken. And I loved in the theme, like it immediately starts with broken glass falling from the sky into a vineyard, right? So it's like like a broken man has fallen from space back down to Earth. And I thought it was just, I mean, when I first saw that, I wanted to like tear up. It was beautiful.
It's pretty brilliant. I mean, we could spend a whole video talking about that title sequence because you know how I feel about title sequences in general, but like just so well done.
We'll do a whole separate video on that.
Yeah.
So then he goes. Obviously, he's injured. He goes back to the chateau, but then his next step is to go to Daystrom, right? Which had the girl from Newsroom. I forgot her name. But speaking of Sorkin, because she was Sorkin did Newsroom. I forgot her name.
I forgot it too.
But
we're old.
You texted me, you slacked me at work when we were talking about Picard weeks ago, and you said, I hope Maddox comes back.
Yeah.
And while we don't see Maddox, the fact that Bruce Maddox is such an important figure in this episode is huge.
Yeah. He's going to come back. I mean, okay, maybe they won't have the character bodily in the episode, but his presence is being felt already. And yeah, I went back and watched The Measure of Man. He's talking about all these things. It's all there.
I became a student of the works of Dr. Noni and Sung, Data's creator, and I have tried to continue his work.
I haven't watched Measure of a Man in like 5 years.
You should watch
So
it.
as soon as I get home tonight, I'm going to go watch Measure of a Man.
Yeah. Some of the stuff he's saying, it's like, wow, they really did their homework, and they're really bringing it back in an interesting and not cheesy way.
So, obviously there he finds out a lot. He sees B4, and they talk a little bit more about how, synths have been outlawed. Which one symbolism I really did like, and I didn't think about it again until the third time I watched it, was the symbolism with Khan. Mm-hmm. Because, it was eugenics, right? So like they were doing all this experimentation on eugenics, and then, that was outlawed. So it's that parallel there between Khan and artificial intelligence, I thought was super interesting.
The Federation has a history of hiding from technologies that are problematic. Eugenics, cloaking devices for political reasons. Now AI and androids and things like that. It's, and then it's creeping into their overall political philosophy too, because they're clearly like sort of, I get the impression they're retreating from galactic life in general. If they were willing to let the Romulans hang and potentially die and just be, fucked.
Okay, so I should say this from the beginning. We work for a digital marketing agency that specializes in politics, right? So we have to deal with politics a lot. I'm actually by trade a political consultant. Do you think like what they're trying to do is parallel a little bit? Like, they were great explorers, but now they're becoming more of an isolationist, to your point. Like that's what I kind of saw in there, that like the Federation is kind of, instead of going to help the Romulans, it's more like make America great again. Or we're going to worry about Earth only. Like we don't have time to deal with them. Right. We're going to deal with us and, the Federation strength. Make the Federation great again, isolationist kind of attitude. That was kind of the parallel that I saw between Picard and today's politics.
Right. And I'm just going to mention here that I've seen a number of people on the internet saying, I'm not going to watch it because it's too political. And I was like, well, what Star Trek have you been watching before now? Because it was political from the beginning.
It doesn't make any sense. I saw multiple people making that comment.
It's so stupid.
This is our escape. Yeah, it's been political since day one. That was part of Gene Roddenberry's vision, was to show you what happens beyond this. And that's all political.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I saw someone else responding to that guy who was saying that sci-fi is not about the future. It's on the surface it is, but at the heart of it, it's really about us now and the way that we live, and it shines light on the things that we're going through. So, like, I don't think it's about anything in particular, but I think a lot of what's going on now informs the writers, especially, I think Michael Chabon is like super talented writer.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
100%.
I mean, I think there's definitely parallels.
So I guess it goes from there. So he finds out Dodge had a twin. I forgot her name. Soji. Okay. So, and then there's the shot of Soji with the Romulan emo guy who mentions his brother was lost. So I've been racking my brain who could be his brother, but I definitely think that's going to come into play. Maybe it's a brother that I kind of feel like it was so in your face that it had to be someone that we know or that we've met before. But I couldn't think of who that might be.
I thought it was interesting that Soji was clearly so filled with empathy for this guy. At least that's the way they presented it. And given that she's clearly an android, it's sort of like Lal.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Data's daughter from The Offspring.
Yeah.
In that she didn't understand emotion, really, but she had them, so she was beginning to blossom emotionally in a way that Data never could.
Yeah.
And now there's visual parallels too, because when I was watching this, and the person I was watching with said, "Is that Lal?" And then you look at the painting, it's like, wow.
What happened to Lal?
I
can't remember.
She had some kind of I think they called it a cascade failure.
Okay, and then what did they do with the body? Wait, does it tell us?
They didn't tell us.
Trash. I wonder if that comes back up. I completely forgot. Yeah, I got to go back. There's so much we got to go back and watch.
Right. The only thing I remember for sure from that was that Data re-downloaded her consciousness and memories back into his own. So
yeah.
Lal is very much a part of, I would think, these new androids. Okay, that brings me to another point. So we know what happened to Data. He got blown up.
Yep.
We know what happened to B4 because he was there at the Daystrom Institute. What we don't know is what happened to Lore.
Well, so my thought is, Picard made it a very strong point in the interview to say we don't know why these Siths went rogue. And to me, that just kept screaming Lore, right? Like, he has to, like, maybe Maddox or maybe the Daystrom Institute, when they were messing with these guys, with these Synths, maybe they used a part of Lore. Because after the episode that Hugh, I forgot the name of the episode, but the episode where Hugh came back and they were on the planet.
Descent.
Okay. After Descent Part 2, they disassembled Lore, right? So you would think if they disassembled him, they probably sent Lore to the Daystrom Institute. So you got to imagine maybe there's something going on there.
Here's my theory. Maddox wanted to take Data apart in The Measure of Man. That's why that was his whole thing. So he's clearly taken B4 apart. And if he got his hands on Lore, he probably said, you know what? Much like David Marcus in The Wrath of Khan used proto-matter to push his experiments ahead in a way that was unethical, I bet you Bruce Maddox used Lore to fill in some gaps and introduce some problems that allowed those androids to go insane.
So maybe the Siths were, he said he only needed one neuron, right? One positronic neuron.
Right.
What if the Siths were from Lore, and that was kind of his experimentation, and then he created the twins with Data's?
Yeah.
Which I don't even know how he would have got Data's, but I'm still trying to figure that out too.
Right.
Because Data exploded, so there's no getting his body unless Data just gave him one, because they were still communicating in other episodes. Because there was if I recall correctly, there was an episode where he was like tracking what he does all day on the ship, and he was sending that information to Maddox.
Season 4, Data's Day. I think it was the episode right after.
Your memory's so much better than mine.
Record entry for transmission to Commander Bruce Maddox, Cybernetics Division, Daystrom Institute. Dear Commander Maddox, in reference to your most recent letter, I agree that your study lacks sufficient primary source information on my programming and operation. Therefore, in response to your request, this correspondence will include a complete record of my activities during a normal day.
Stop Data!
I can't remember, but anyway, obviously it closes with them being on a Borg ship.
Yeah.
And I was just.
There's so many unanswered questions there, so many things we have to find out. Where did that Borg ship come from? Are there still Borg on it? Why are there humans working with them on it? I don't know.
Oh, man. All right, so next Thursday, we have another episode. By the way, Will Wheaton did a really good job with Ready Room afterward.
That was great.
It was good. Any other thoughts before we close out our first thing?
Any other thoughts?
I'm reading a lot of the Discovery books. So I'm on the Enterprise Wars right now. So it's a book about what Pike and Spock and Number One and the Enterprise was doing during the Cleon War. Which is about halfway through. It's good. I'll give you guys a review next video.
Yeah, I don't think I have any other thoughts.
Oh, and one other thing, I wanted to show this. So I've been collecting the Eagle Moss starships. So I just got this when I was in New York, ran into this at a comic book shop. Eagle Moss is doing a really good job with these things, man.
Yeah.
This is the Enterprise version from Discovery.
Love it.
It's beautiful, man. I really, really like it.
Speaking of which, in the Ready Room, Will Wheaton played a clip from next week's episode where it shows like a holographic Enterprise on the ceiling.
Yeah.
The Enterprise D, but also
the original.
This one.
Oh, was that one?
It was this one from Discovery. So
I didn't realize
they're
that.
weaving that in.
Nice.
I'll be interested to see how this connects to Discovery, because we've got that guy, Daj's boyfriend, whatever the species is, can't remember. Anyway, there's little things.
Yeah. Well, what we're really excited about, the reason we're doing this new show is that this universe is exploding. Like we need real fans to be supporting these things, and we're not going to get any more Trek.
Right.
What we don't need is people out there just whining and complaining and turning people off, because the more people that watch these new shows, the more new shows we get. And hopefully CBS will continue to invest in this. So be a real fan and be just pumped that we're getting all this new content.
I am not going to say that I've never criticized Star Trek. There's plenty to criticize. It's been around for 50 years. But I mean, the criticism and the bitching cannot be the point of your fandom. If it is, you should just move on and watch something else.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to our first episode.
Bye.